Hey, this is the Journey to Nowhere Read Aloud. Um, we're going to start with The Taste of Dirt. This is taking place right after they show up in the woods, and Mem realizes that, there's a lot of trees around here. What are we going to do? How are we going to get home? And then she realizes, this is home. We've got to clear this land and get it ready. So while I'm reading, I will try to show some pictures to help you understand, but if it gets to a point where you need to pause the video and look something up that you're not sure about, make sure you do that to build your knowledge. So here we go. We slept on quilts on the ground that first night. I couldn't tell if there were any stars because the canopy of branches overhead was almost solid. Papa built a fire to keep the wild animals away, and the flickering light made strange shadows dance across the giant tree trunks. In the distance, I heard wolves calling to one another. It took me a long time to go to sleep. The first thing Papa did the next morning was cut two forked limbs to hold a pole over the fire for Mama's cooking pot. This should make things a bit easier than cooking on the road, Aurelia. It's some better, Mama said, but I'll be glad to have a proper fireplace with cranes and an oven again. The fire had gone out, so Papa struck the flint with steel, trying to light a piece of charcloth. That will happen in time, Aurelia. Just how much time are you thinking it'll take? Papa struck harder at the flint, not looking up. Of course, you'll just have an open hearth in the log cabin in a few years. When we've saved up to build the frame house, you'll get the fireplace and oven. Jeremiah 9, you told me the cabin would be much smaller than the house in Connecticut and that we'd not have proper glass windows. I didn't mind that, but you never told me I'd be cooking on an open hearth with no oven. I mind that very much. Here's an example of an open hearth. So it's just a fireplace, and she's going to have to put her pot in there and cook over that, which is much more difficult than an oven like we have today. A spark from the flint finally started the cloth smoldering. Papa held it to some small twigs and blew on it until flames leapt up, almost burning his fingers. There's your fire, Aurelia. Hurry up with breakfast. I have work to do. All right, so this is the fire that Papa would have gotten going for Mama, and it's just out in the open, and the forked limbs are there, and the pot kind of hangs on it. Not nearly as easy to cook on. Mama's eyes were throwing sparks better than the flint was, but she held her tongue. Her anger came out in other noises, though, as she banged the pots and pans together, getting them out of the wagon. We ate breakfast in silence. Then Papa took his axe and started cutting down nearby young trees. He dug holes to set up two forked trunks about 10 feet apart to support a pole. Then he leaned logs all across the back of it and stacked more logs up the sides. I want to help him, but Mama kept me busy washing clothes in the stream and hanging them on the branches of small trees to dry. Papa worked the whole day building with Joshua, helping him. It's a half-face camp, Papa said when he was finished. It'll give us some good shelter until the cabin is ready. I put bark on the roof to shed off the rain. So this is a sample of a half-face camp that Papa might have set up. Now, he would have had bark in the background on this so that the water wouldn't come through, but they'd be able to sleep there if they wanted to. Mama kept on with folding clothes. She didn't even look at the new camp. Then Papa moved the poles for the fire in front of the opening. He piled sticks against one side and carried coals from the other fire to kindle the new one. Finally, he stood next to the camp, half smiling, wanting Mama to say something. She ignored him and started frying some mush and bacon on the griddle over the fire. I'll build you a puncheon table and benches tomorrow, he offered. We can set them up outside until the cabin is built. I didn't know what a puncheon table was, but Mama didn't seem impressed. Food always tastes better when you can eat on a table, Papa offered, still trying to get Mama's approval. A burning stick rolled off the fire and landed on Mama's skirt as she bent over the griddle. She yanked the skirt away before the fabric charred. Food tastes better, she said, when it's cooked in a proper fireplace. Papa's shoulders sagged and he started to turn away. It's a fine shelter, Papa, I said, and you built the whole thing in a day. I wanted to add that without Joshua's help it would have taken him half a day, but this was no time to start a new argument. Papa started on Mama's puncheon table the next morning. 4 split logs fastened together, with their flat sides up, and 4 tree limbs pounded into the bottom for legs. He made 2 benches the same way, 1 log wide. So here's an example of a puncheon bench. You can kind of see it's just a log that's been split, and then you kind of pound the legs into it there. The table would be the same way, just a few wider and taller sticks here would be used to, or limbs would be used to make the legs of the table. They didn't look much like real furniture to me, but Mama softened a bit when she saw them. Even though she was still angry about the oven and fireplace, she could tell Papa was trying to please her. Our half-face camp was beginning to feel a little like home. Mama and I gathered piles of fragrant pine needles and filled mattress covers with them, so now we had something softer than the ground to sleep on. It was nice to be under cover, so our quilts wouldn't be soggy with dew in the morning. Papa moved the wagon close to the shelter and rested the wagon tongue on one of the side logs, giving us a place to hang up clothes to dry. He rolled a big, flat-top rock over to the front of the wagon to use as a step when we needed to climb up and get something. It almost felt like a house with two rooms. We kept all the food barrels in the wagon to protect them from animals, but we put my dresser on one side wall of the shelter. What clothes we had left were kept in there, and we used the top of it to stack our dishes. There wasn't much space, but it would have to do until our cabin was built. Tending to the animals didn't take much time. We just had to look for eggs each day and milk Chloe every morning and night. She wasn't giving so much milk as she had in Connecticut, and it didn't taste as good either. Mama said it was because she had used up her energy walking on the journey, and she was browsing with the oxen on twigs and small branches instead of eating good pasture grass. We had to give her some corn each day to keep her milk coming. The chickens scratched for bugs, and the stream was near enough for all the animals to get a drink. Sophie found treats for herself by digging among the tree roots. She wasn't getting around as well since that wolf gashed her flank. We knew that all the animals were in some danger from wild animals, so we made sure they stayed close to camp. We kept the cow and the oxen from running away by hobbling their front legs with some rope. They could take steps, but they couldn't get off to running. Sophie was no problem. She stayed near her best friend Chloe. The hens ranged close to camp during the day, flying into the trees when something frightened them. After sunset, they gathered in their wooden cages in the wagon. They seemed to think of it as their home. Most of the time, they laid their eggs in the cage, but Mama sent Joshua and I off on a treasure hunt every day to see if a hen had hidden her eggs somewhere else. Soon the hens would be getting broody, hiding their eggs in more clever places so they could hatch chicks in their secret nests. Mama usually let one hen go broody every spring, so we'd get more chickens. The others she'd dunk in cold water to shock the broodiness out of them. I found a good spot to clear for planting, Papa said one morning at breakfast. The trees are farther apart there, so I won't have to cut so many down. I'll use the oxen to pull up the stumps and we can get some corn planted. Can I help, Papa? I asked. Not today, Mem. Stay and help your Mama. He finished his coffee and headed off with his axe. I couldn't wait until Papa got to the plowing. I was good at working in the field. Surely he'd want me to help him. I helped Mama clear the breakfast fixings and saved the leftover cornmeal mush to fry up for dinner. Aren't you getting tired of cooking cornmeal mush and fried mush all the time, Mama? What I really meant was that I was powerful sick of eating it, but I knew Mama wouldn't take kindly to hearing that, and I had the feeling she was punishing Papa by serving nothing but mush. Of course I'm tired of it, she snapped. What more can I do with nothing but a fire pit to work with? And look at this. She lifted her skirt and showed me the brown scorch marks across the hem. It's impossible to keep from brushing my skirt over these hot coals. It's a wonder I haven't gone up in flames. Maybe you should wet the bottom of your skirt while you're cooking, I suggested. Oh, and now you'd have me catch my death of cold as well? I could see that whatever I said to Mama would be the wrong thing, so I asked if I could go see what Papa was doing. That was another wrong thing to say. Fine, run off to your Papa, leave me to work alone. If you still need me, I'll stay, Mama. I thought the morning chores were finished. Mama sighed. All right, Mem, just don't get lost, and find out if your father plans to come back here for dinner, or if he wants it brought to him. I'll ask him, Mama. I followed the sound of Papa's axe, but after I had been walking for a short time, it stopped. I stood still, trying to get my bearings, waiting for Papa to start cutting again. Listening so hard made me realize something that had bothered me since we'd arrived, but I couldn't put it into words. The woods were almost perfectly silent. There were no birds here, leastwise none that I'd heard since we'd arrived, except for a woodpecker or two. This time of year in Connecticut, the trees would be ringing with birdsong. I had no idea which way to walk. Papa, I called. There was no answer. I didn't dare venture further without knowing I was going in the right direction. I learned my lesson back at the Red Lion. At least here I knew my parents were close by. I listened again, but there was nothing but deathly silence. Mom, I shouted, where are you? I didn't think I had walked out of earshot of camp, but there was no answer from her either. I stayed in place and called first to Papa, then to Mama. Before long I heard the thwack of Papa's axe. I hurried toward the sound and found him. Papa, I called between swings of his axe. He looked up, smiled, and wiped the sweat from his forehead as I ran toward him. I tried to follow the sound of your axe, but you stopped. Papa leaned on his axe handle. I had to, Mem. I've already given this hemlock enough blows to fell a dozen normal trees. The trunk of this must be 6 feet across. It's wearing me out. I looked up and couldn't even see the top of the tree. It must have been over 100 feet tall. Mama wants to know if you're coming back for dinner or if she should bring it to you, Papa. But can I stay and watch you cut down this tree before I go tell her? I'll be chopping away the better part of the day before this monster falls, Mem. Go back and tell your mother to start cooking now, and I'll come along soon. My stomach tells me it's time for a noontide snack break. All right, Papa, but can I come back with you this afternoon to watch? If your mama doesn't need you for anything, I guess it's all right. You have to mind you're out of the way, though. I can't be worried about landing a tree on you. Papa pointed to the tree with a blaze on it. I've cut blazes all the way back to camp. Just follow them and you won't get lost. I waved and headed back, the sound of his axe ringing behind me. The trees were further apart in this section of the woods, letting the sunshine reach the ground. I'd gone but a short distance when I spotted a patch of star-shaped lavender flowers, different from what we had in Connecticut. If Mama had flowers on her new puncheon table, it would seem more like home. I knelt down to pick a bouquet for her. Suddenly a loud crack split the silence, followed by sharp popping noises. At first I thought it was gunshots. Then I heard Papa yell, "Mem, watch out!" I looked back and saw the hemlock falling right toward me. It smashed through the branches of other trees, slicing off huge limbs as if they were made of paper. It was coming down so fast I didn't have time to run. Even if there had been time, I couldn't make any part of me move. Just before it hit, I pulled myself into a ball, covering my head with my hands. Then with an explosion that shook the whole forest, the huge tree landed, and I could see nothing but darkness. I thought I surely must be dead. If I had lived through being hit by that tree, I should be in terrible pain. I felt nothing. Then I heard Papa calling me, his voice racked with sobs. "Mem! Mem, where are you?" "Papa," I called, choking. My mouth was filled with the taste of dirt. A branch had pushed me forward, shoving me into the ground. Papa kept calling me, his voice getting closer. "Mem, where are you? Are you all right?" "Here, Papa, I'm here." If I could taste dirt, then I must be alive. A branch had wedged itself above me, keeping the weight of the tree from crushing me. I reached out and found the tree trunk to my left. It had barely missed. I felt my arms and my legs as far as I could reach. It was a miracle. I was completely covered with limbs and branches without the slightest injury other than a sore shoulder. I flattened out on my stomach and pulled myself along with my arms until I found an opening in the branches, big enough to squeeze through. Papa was frantically searching through the limbs further down the trunk. When he saw me come out in the open, he dropped his axe and came running. "Jeremiah!" Mama shouted from the other direction. She was stumbling toward us with Joshua in hand. "We heard the crash. Are you all right?" Papa reached me first. He dropped to his knees, hugging me so hard it almost knocked the breath out of me. "I thought I'd killed you," he said. I buried my face in his shoulder. "I know. I thought the same thing." The next morning at breakfast, Papa made a new plan. "Cutting these giant trees is too dangerous on my own. I can't judge when they're cut enough to fall, or even what direction they'll take when they go. Maybe you can ask some of the other settlers how they managed," Mama said, pouring some coffee into Papa's cup. Papa drained it in one gulp. How could he drink something so hot without burning himself? He once told Mama he had an iron gullet. "There's nobody very close by, Aurelia. Anyways, I don't want to be wasting a whole day going off to look for neighbors." "But we're going to need neighbors to help us put the cabin up," Mama said. "You told me there would be help when we needed it." "There will be help, but I don't need it yet. Besides, I've been looking over the land and I found a spot where a number of trees have blown over. The roots have been lifted right out of the ground. Once I cut them up and haul them out of the way with the oxen, I'll have a big open space for planting. The stream runs close by, it's not too far from the road, so it'll be a good place to put a cabin too. The children and I will come along with you," Mama said. "I'd like to see where we'll be living." Papa shrugged. "Won't look like much till I get the trees cut up and cleared away." "You're not cutting down any trees, are you, Papa?" I asked, just to be sure. Papa tousled my hair. "Not a one, Mem. You'll be safe. You can't be hurt by a tree that's already fallen over." We followed Papa in a different direction this time and came to a place where the giant trees were stretched out across the ground as if they had fainted dead away. "Will you look at the roots on these things?" Papa said. "Some of them are 10, even 12 feet across. Look at this one. Must have been pulled up half a ton of earth when it fell. I'll have to knock the dirt off these roots to fill up the crater it left behind." He walked along the tree trunk to the place where the limbs started branching off and started chopping. All right, so to give you an idea of what Papa's talking about, this is the ball of roots. His example might be a little bigger, but he's planning on chopping off the tops here and hauling away the top of the tree and then it'll leave a clearing. So they've already fallen. So it's a little safer this way. So we'll see how that goes. He walked along the tree trunk to the place where the limbs started branching off and began chopping. Mama, Joshua, and I wandered along the banks of the stream. It's pretty here, isn't it, Mom? I asked. Mama looked off into the distance. It's nice, I guess. I'd like it better if we had neighbors nearby. Look, Joshua shouted. Fish! He darted after a streak of silver that flashed in the stream, lost his footing, and tumbled down the bank. I was closest to him and grabbed the back of his trousers just in time to keep him from getting dunked. I handed him up to Mama. You go play near your father, Joshua, she said. The water's running too fast for you to be on its banks. Mind you stay clear of Papa's axe, though. Mama and I walked a bit further down the stream, gathering wildflowers. There was lavender ones, pale pink, some tiny white ones. We sat on the bank and talked while Mama taught me how to braid a flower wreath for my hair. When it was finished, I tried to see my reflection in the stream, but the water was running too fast to be a mirror. Do I look pretty, Mama? I asked. You're beautiful, Nem. Getting more so every day. She combed her fingers through my hair, twisting ringlets around my face. I didn't know your hair had so much natural curl in it. Maybe you'll set a new style. It's darkened into the same color as mine. Your papa used to say when the sun hit my hair, it reminded him of maple syrup. She gathered her skirts and stood up. I should be getting back to camp. I don't want to leave the animals too long without someone to watch them. I wish Mama and I could have sat all afternoon in that spot. It wasn't often we got to be together without chores to do, and nobody had ever called me beautiful before. As I followed Mama, I walked taller, holding up my head so the wreath wouldn't fall off, and imagining my hair glistening in the sun like maple syrup. As we neared the spot where we'd left Papa, I heard Mama gasp. There was a sight I never would have believed. Papa had chopped through the tree, separating the top from the trunk. Now the tree was slowly setting itself upright again, like a corpse rising from the dead. The huge ball of roots that had been standing on end was coming back down to earth, into the hole that it had wrenched from. And there, climbing up out of that hole, was Joshua. All right, so in this scary scenario for Mem, Joshua here, I've added him in, about as good as my pictures when I draw on the whiteboard, right? And he is climbing in the hole at the end here, but this tree is lifting up, it said, like a corpse rising from the dead. So it's the dirt is heavy enough that it's sinking back into the ground, and Joshua's down here playing. So you can sense her alarm that Joshua could be crushed by this tree. The next chapter is called Bear Meat. Be on the lookout for that one coming at you tomorrow.